Hello everyone and welcome to this new lesson, Storytellers.
Storytellers.
Once upon a time. Vocabulary. Storyteller, storyteller. Audience, audience. Entertain, entertain. Educate, educate. Moral lesson, moral lesson. Isolated, isolated. Virgin, virgin. Emphasis, emphasis. Talented, talented. Professional, professional. Oral, oral is the opposite of written, written. Remember, remember is the opposite of forget, forget. Traditional, traditional is the opposite of modern, modern. Similar, similar, or we can say the same. It is the opposite of different, different. Rich, rich. Rich is the opposite of poor, poor. Let's read now. In the days before television, radio, and films, people told stories, and with these stories they could entertain their audience, teach them, and give them moral lessons. In Arabic, traditional stories often start كان يا ما كان, but once upon a time is the traditional beginning of folk tales in English. In the past, people couldn't travel easily. Journeys were long and slow, so each village was isolated and told different versions of the same stories. Amazingly, many of these traditional stories are very similar across the Arab world. There are stories about princes and princesses, animals and ghosts, thieves and robbers, hidden treasures, rich sultans and poor men. Men used to meet around a fire after dark and tell their stories. Women used to gather together and tell stories while they sewed their dresses. They told stories to their children to educate and entertain them. Most people could tell simple stories, but most of them couldn't remember long stories or tell them in an exciting way. So, there were also professional storytellers who traveled from village to village. In this way, they could have dinner and stay the night. They were very talented, and they could remember incredibly long stories and poems. In fact, they could talk for days, and they did this with only a stick for emphasis. Their audience listened attentively, stopping the storyteller to discuss the story's moral lesson. Sometimes the storyteller stopped at an exciting moment to take a sip of tea. Certain qualities were important in these stories: generosity, faith, and hospitality. Fortunately, many of these oral tales were collected and recorded before they were forgotten, and we can still read, listen, and learn from them today. Vocabulary: storytelling. Complete the following sentences about storytelling. Use the words in the box. Audience, entertain, folk tale, moral lesson, storyteller, talented. Everyone can tell a story, but not as well as a storyteller who's usually very talented and has the ability to remember long stories. A folk tale is a story that is passed on from one generation to another by word of mouth. It usually gives a moral lesson. Good storytellers entertain their audience, who usually offer them dinner and a place to stay the night. Comprehension. Read the article and answer these questions. How do folk tales begin in English and in Arabic? In English, they begin once upon a time. In Arabic, they begin كان يا مكان. What was the purpose of storytelling? To entertain the audience, teach them, and give them moral lessons. Why is it surprising that folk stories are similar across the Arab world? Because villages were isolated and told different versions of the same stories. What did professional storytellers use to help tell the story? They used a stick for emphasis. What technique did the storytellers use to increase the tension? They used to stop at an exciting moment to take a sip of tea. What are the qualities that are communicated in Arab folk stories? Generosity, faith, and hospitality. Traditional folk tales offer moral lessons. Do modern stories offer the same? The answer here is up to you. You can say, for example, yes, but they are not the same as the old stories. Grammar: could and couldn't. Read the article again. Copy and complete these sentences and phrases. We have could or couldn't plus verb from the text. In the past, people couldn't travel easily. Most people could tell simple stories, but most of them couldn't remember long stories. In this way, they could have dinner. Professional storytellers could remember incredibly long stories and poems. In fact, they could talk for days. Did you know the Cinderella story has thousands of versions around the world in nearly every culture? It probably originated in China over 2,000 years ago. Activity book. Language practice. Use the following definitions to complete the crossword puzzle. A person who tells stories. Storyteller. A story told orally and passed on through generations. Folktale. A group of people who sit and watch an event or a performance. Audience. This is a very important question. You have to know the definition of the word. A message that a story passes on the listener or reader. Moral lesson. To provide enjoyment to people watching an event or a performance. Entertain. Having a natural skill for something. Talented. Could and couldn't. In present we say I can. أنا أستطيع. النفي منا can't. I can't. أما الماضي من كان هو could. ال لا تلفظ. could. النفي منا couldn't. لاحظوا إنه بعد could أو couldn't بيجي الفعل بحالة المصدر. Use could to describe general possibility or ability in the past. إذا بنستخدم could لما بدنا نقول إنه في شغلة نحن قدرنا نعملها أو ما قدرنا نعملها. إذا بتحكي عن القدرة أو الإمكانية. For example, I could answer all the questions in the test. I could answer مصدر. I couldn't go to the concert because I didn't have a ticket. I couldn't go. مصدر. Complete the text with could or couldn't. One summer's evening, the men in the garden of a coffee house were playing a game. Because it was dark, they had candles on their tables so that they could see. They noticed a man looking anxiously for something on the ground. "What's wrong, my friend?" someone asked him. "Weren't you able to find what you had lost?" "No," said the man sadly. "I lost some money earlier this evening. I looked all over the garden, but I couldn't find it." "Where did you lose it?" "In the street next door." "But it could still be there. Why are you looking here and not there?" "Because it was dark there. I couldn't see anything. Here it is much lighter," the foolish man replied. Irregular verbs. Can, could, tell, told, lose, lost. That's everything for today. Thank you very much. See you next time.